Hey everyone, here we are at Crossways Preserve. This is our first day of bird banding for the season. So we've already caught a few birds today, but we have a few waiting here to be banded. I'm Margaret Rohde. I'm the stewardship coordinator for the Wissahickon Valley Watershed Association. And this is Christy Morley, who's our naturalist. Alright, so we have some birds that are not banded yet that I'm going to go through the process of so you guys can see how it works. And we have one that's a recapture, which means it was banded last year. So we're just going to go through that and you can check that out. So we have 8 nets set up all around us, and we check them every 40 minutes. And then we put the birds in these cloth bags and take them back here to the central banding station where we band them. So this is a wood thrush. It's the only thrush species that breeds around here. So there's different size bands for different birds. Some are really small, like hummingbird bands, and some are pretty big. So each band is uniquely numbered with 9 digits, and it has a little seal. So we open it up, and then we use these special pliers that have holes machined in them, so that when we crimp the band on the bird's leg, it's going to be in a perfect circle. Just like that. So we make sure the band is nice and sealed so no vegetation or anything can get stuck in there. And it spins freely up and down the bird's leg. So now this bird can be identified as an individual because it has this unique number that only it will have.
504, right?
Yeah. So then to process birds, we look at their feathers to try to age them. So when I'm looking at the bird's feathers, I'm looking for differences in the quality of the feathers between the feather tracts and within the feather tracts. And this just tells us if these feathers were juvenile feathers, which will be of a lesser quality, or adult feathers, which will be of a higher quality, so they'll be more shiny, they'll have more color. So all of these feathers are even on this bird. They're all nice rusty colored feathers. If this was a younger bird that was hatched last summer, it would have pale tips to the edge of these feathers, which are called the greater coverts, and that would tell us that it was a second year because it hatched last year. Since this bird has even feathers without any rusty tips, we can say it's an after second year, which means that it was born before last summer, and it's an adult bird. So then, to see if it's a male or a female, we're going to blow on the stomach to check for a brood patch. So this is not a female because if it was, she would have lost all the feathers here to have a brood patch, but she doesn't. So it's a male. And then we blow down here. So that's called the cloacal protuberance, which a male will have during the breeding season. So it's a male with a CP of 3. So then we also look at the fat on the bird as a measure of how well they're doing in the habitats that we have for them. So we do that by blowing here, which is called the furricular hollow. So you can see right there, this bird doesn't have any fat. If it did, it would look kind of like yellowness under the skin, kind of like how a chicken looks. So we look at in the wingtips and on the abdomen also, and there's no fat on this bird, so it's 0. And then I'm going to take a wing measurement. Still 110. And then the last thing that we do for every bird is weigh it. So we take its body mass in grams. 48. So now this bird is done, and I'm going to let him go. So a lot of you probably recognize this guy. This is a blue jay. This is a really common backyard bird for us in this area and pretty much all of North America. They are biters. So his legs are bigger than the last bird, obviously, so he's going to get a bigger band.
I need the whole number.
Okay. 1222 30624. And this also takes larger pliers. So when I'm closing it, I spin the band and close it from different angles to make sure that it's perfectly rounded and sealed nice and tight. So once banded, all of these birds will have these bands the rest of their life. So when we recatch them, if we recatch them, we'll be able to tell how old they are, and that's why we record their age when we first band them. So this is the second year. So blue jays, when they're born, these feathers, the primary coverts, don't have this black barring that they have on the greater coverts right here until they molt in the fall, and then when they're adults they'll have black barring. So because there's no black barring here and these feathers are very brown and kind of drab looking, we know that this bird hatched last summer, so these are still its juvenile feathers. So I can say that it's a second year bird because it's in its second year of life.
And then Margaret, Gail Farmer asked, why do you ban birds?
I was going to get to that. So the whole reason that we ban birds here is because we're trying to understand how they respond to how we manage our habitat. So we're trying to manage this preserve fairly intensively to try to make it more habitable for them so that they can have higher productivity when they're here breeding in the summer and higher survivorship over the winter. So we've done a lot of restoration projects here. We've done a lot of planting of native trees and removal of invasive species to try to increase and enhance the habitat for birds. So by studying them, this is the third year of the project, so we have data from 2015, and since we've been doing all these restoration projects, 5 to 10 years down the road, we'll be able to see if there was a change in the bird population in terms of how many young they have, how well they're surviving from year to year. And that'll tell us if what we're doing is helping them. So that's really our goal here. And it's part of a larger project called the MAPS project, which is Monitoring Avian Productivity and Survivorship, which was started by the Institute for Bird Populations in 1989. And it's an intercontinental project, so there are stations like this one here in Canada and Mexico and throughout the United States. So we all collect data during the breeding season. It all goes to the same place, the Institute for Bird Populations, where they can look at it to compare habitats and species across the United States. And that also helps us understand how a site like ours that has a different vegetative composition and is doing kind of better for the birds, how we can change our habitat to be more like that habitat. So it kind of gives us tools for conservation. So the secondary coverts are formative, and the juvenile feathers and the primary coverts are juvenile. So again, I'm just looking for fat on this bird, and you can see, so that's that furcular hollow I was talking about, and there's no fat on this bird either, so it's a 0. unknown. So I can't say if this is a male or female bird because I don't see evidence of it being a male. I don't see a cloacal protuberance like I did on that wood thrush. And there's no definitive brood patch or lack of a brood patch. So if this was a female bird, by this time of year she probably, or actually they might not be breeding yet, but if this bird was breeding and it was a female, she would have dropped these breast feathers. So this whole area would become bare, and then it would become highly vascularized, so she'd have more blood vessels closer to the surface of her skin, and the purpose of that is to more efficiently transfer heat to her eggs. The eggs won't start developing until she starts brooding on them, so just sitting on them, and then her body heat is what starts their development.
Molts. Where?
There's one for flight feather molt. There's no flight feather molt, no body molt.
Only wait.
$121. Stay still. 77.5. Just gonna let this guy slide out. So we have one more bird, and this is a recap, which means this is a bird that we banded either last year or the year before. And it's everybody's favorite gray catbird, which is another one of our most common birds here. So see, it's already got a band, which we probably put on. This looks pretty old. This might be from 2015 or 16. So for recaps, we do everything the same. I'm just going to read the band number. 2411 36418.
That's 2015.
Yeah, so this bird is from our first season of banding in 2015. So we can probably say it's about 3 years old. And obviously it's an adult bird because of that. So on a young catbird, if this was a second-year bird, there would probably be a limit between these feathers that would look different. So some of them might be more brown, whereas these are all uniformly a nice pearly gray. And that's characteristic of adult feathers. So this is a female. And here's an example of that brood patch I was talking about. 3. So she's lost all her feathers. There's a lot of vascularization and a lot of fluid right there so that she can transfer her body heat. So I'm going to do her pretty quickly so we can let her go so she can get back to her eggs.
She's after second year, right?
Mm-hmm. 0 fat. 86.
Okay.
Hold on. I have to zero it before I put the bird in. $35.1.
And then after you let her go, Lisa asks, does this hurt the birds in any way?
No, not at all. There's been a lot of studies that have looked into how banding affects birds, and they've never found anything bad about it. There's been pretty much throughout the world people ban birds, and the effect is not harmful to them at all. We find out so much information from doing this that it's worth it if anything bad even happens, but nothing ever does. I'm gonna let this bird go. we go.
Yeah.
Alright, so thank you guys for joining us. If you have any questions, feel free to message us at the watershed, and have a great day.